Hi guys, you all know who I am. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here in a dressing gown, 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Well, very simply, it's bloody cold. Dressing gown's very warm and very comfortable. So that answers the question you haven't asked, or probably wouldn't have anyway. But I thought I'd just add that. Today I'm going to tell you a story from my website. In case I haven't mentioned, the website is brucemcallister.com. McAllister has one L. That's finished. Okay. The story is called A Tropical Roof, Depthchargers, and a Hookah. Now get your filthy minds out of the gutter. Wasn't that kind of hooker? Stay tuned, you'll find out more. Okay, it's about a weekend away. A group of friends and my best mate, Docky, who was also part of the group of friends. And we were going on a crayfishing trip actually, to Cooktown. Now, we call them crayfish. They are crayfish. The shops call them lobsters because they get more money. They're not lobsters, they don't have claws. Yeah. Anyway, so down south you've got the big red lobsters, or the biggish red lobsters. On the Great Barrier Reef you've got the huge painted crays, which are really, really delicious. So we're going on a fishing trip for the lobsters in Cooktown, like I said. Now, two of our friends were brothers. Now, that was an accident of birth, a bit like the fact that Docky was a Kiwi. It was an accident of birth too, I guess. Anyway, they had their biggest car yard in Cairns, and one of their cars was a Toyota Land Cruiser troop carrier, probably about 1 million kilometres on the clock. Rotten as rusty as hell, but still drove okay. And it had a tropical roof, which is like a wooden board, over the bonnet, the roof of the car, to keep the sun off and keep it cool. So it was an obvious choice. If we destroyed the car on the way there or the way back, it didn't matter. Anyway, so we're driving there, and as usual, we had a pub crawl on the way, which means we stopped at every pub and had a drink, usually a beer, except for our mate Docky, who drank Depthchargers. A Depthcharger is a schooner of beer, and a shot of whiskey still in the glass dropped into the schooner glass. So while we were mildly happy, he was off his tits, as usual. He's a two-pot screamer anyway. Anyway, so it's raining, and the windscreen wipers are going and kind of working. No air conditioning. We had the windows down. Anyway, Docky decides he's bored and off his tits. So he wanted to go and dance on the roof, the tropical roof. No seatbelts, no insurance, no God knows what, but nobody cared. So he went through the window onto the roof, dancing. He decided he needed to go pee. So he peed over the front of the car onto the windscreen. The wipers going backwards and forwards made sure we got to share the rain and the pee. We were so excited about that you cannot believe. Okay, this went on for a short time, the pee bit. The dancing continued until we got onto the bitumen where it was smooth and we could move a bit faster. There's a thumping on the roof. Stop the car, stop the car. So we stopped the car. How unusual. We got out, had a look, and there's Docky on the roof, naked, not a stitch of clothes, and sunburnt to hell. So we lent him a t-shirt and a pair of underpants, not from ourselves, but from out of our suitcases. And we finally got into Cooktown. That guy was burnt so badly you cannot believe. He had a bald patch on the top of his head. He used to call it a solar panel for a sex machine. It was glowing, literally. He was so badly burnt, I've never seen anybody like that. Don't let anybody tell you can't get sunburnt on a cloudy day. Truly you can, seriously sunburnt. Okay. Next day we go fishing. We've rented a boat with a hooker. Now, for those who have got your minds out of the gutter, hooker is like a scuba tank, but in bulk. It's a air compressor that has 4, 5 or 6 long hoses attached to it with a mouthpiece on the end. And there's always somebody in the boat who controls the airflow and makes sure it's still going. Because unlike a scuba tank, if you run out of air, there's no safety valve. There's none of that 5 minutes of air left to come up. Now that's a horrible experience. I've experienced it a couple of times and it is scary. Anyway, Docky's been elected to look after the Hookah. Now, that was a stupid move. He was sick as, sunburnt as, and in a very feeling sorry for himself mood, which he constantly was when he was pissed. Anyway, or getting over being pissed. He was in charge and we went diving. Now, going for crays is a bit different than normal fishing. The crays live under the coral, or during the day anyway, and you don't put your hands under the coral ever. There's these horrible moray eel things that will take your fingers or your whole bloody hand off if you do. So a long steel rod with a hook on the end, which would wave around underneath the coral until you found a cray. You'd drag it out, and you'd put it into a net bag on your belt, a bit like a onion bag but stronger. Now, when the crays were put in the bag, the first thing is they click their tails. It's like a bloody dinner bell for sharks. They come from everywhere. So to counteract that, instead of having big long bang sticks, we had bang guns, which were like a pistol that had 12 gauge shotgun cartridges in the ends. And if a shark got too close or too nosy, you shot it in the gills. So it bled like hell and it took off like, shaking it on down the road. All the other sharks following it and eating it left you alone. That was the theory. It worked sometimes. Sometimes, like today, or that particular day, there were no sharks at all, which is seriously good. Anyway, we've got a bag full of, bags, plural, full of crays. A huge bloody haul. Then suddenly we had no air. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. So we came up to the surface, which is what you do when you run out of air, carefully. And we finally surfaced. And to say that my mates were not in the happiest mood would be an understatement. We weren't. We swam back to the boat, and there's Docky sitting up there next to the compressor that's not working. And we said, "What happened?" He said, "I turned it off." I said, "Why did you turn it off?" He said, "I was lonely." Now that was probably the worst thing he could have said, because he's going to get a whole heap lonelier. Nobody spoke to him on the way back to the shore. Nobody spoke to him that night in the motel. Nobody spoke to him all the way back to Cairns the following day. And I don't think anybody spoke to him for the next 2 weeks. He was begging for us to talk to him. He was begging us to take him on our next fishing trip. That never happened, by the way. So, and it's a bit more about him. Interesting guy. Big guy. 6 foot something. Built like a brick shit house. Hands like baseball pitch mitts. Tough as nails. A $2 drunk. He got drunk so easy, and then he was a big sook. Anyway, that's by the by. Every Friday night, we used to go, he and his wife and my wife and I, or my ex-wife and I, used to go to a nightclub, restaurant, bar, whatever you want to call it, called Gypsy D's, which was named after Dee, or Gypsy. I think her real name was Dee. She was a nice person. And inside the restaurant, they had an indoor balcony. And at the end of the balcony, they had tables right along the balcony. At the end of the balcony, there was a round table, 4 chairs. That was our permanent booking every Friday night. This is a habit that lasted with me over the years. Anyway, so they had beautiful meals, good booze, a live band, and it was just a great time, And then when they cleared the food away, or the plates away, we cleared the food away, then the band would start playing, and guess what? Docky would jump up on the table and start doing striptease. Anyway, when he started doing striptease, the band would start playing the stripper. The other guests would all start clapping and cheering, encouraging him, which was the worst thing he could have done. And when he got down to his underwear, the bouncers would come up, pick him up, take him outside and his clothes, and gently deposit him on the footpath, and then shut the door. He would get dressed, come back in to cheering, wild cheering and clapping, come back upstairs, have a drink, band would start playing, he'd get back up on the table and start stripping again. Bouncers would come up, take him outside with his clothes, and it would happen again, and sometimes even a 4th time. I think the record time was 6 or something, I don't know, I can't remember. Anyway, he was a hit. Dee, who owned the place, loved it because it created reputation. And everybody came on Friday night to see him strip as much as anything else. And it was a good night had by all. So that's my story and an introduction to my mate Docky. There's a few other stories about that lunatic as well, which I'll get to eventually. I enjoyed telling the story. I hope you enjoyed hearing it. I'll catch you later.